Support for WUWM podcasts comes from Johnson Financial Group, helping customers build financial plans around their unique goals for over 55 years. More at johnsonfinancialgroup.com. Johnson Bank and Johnson Wealth, Inc. are Johnson Financial Group companies.
This is Capital Notes from Milwaukee's NPR. I'm Maayan Silver in conversation with J.R. Ross, editor of WizPolitics.com. Hi, J.R. Happy spring election week.
Hey, thanks. Same to you.
Thank you. We've got, as we mentioned, the spring election tomorrow. In the state Supreme Court race, there's liberal-backed appellate judge Chris Taylor. She's running against conservative-backed appellate judge Maria Lazar. The court is currently made up of 4 liberals and 3 conservatives, and the open seat is to replace a conservative candidate. So as a result, the liberal-leaning justices will be in the majority on the court, regardless of who wins in the immediate future. There have been a lot fewer ads in this race and a lot less money spent than in previous years. What would you say to someone, JR, who says that this race is politically inconsequential?
Well, if you are a liberal and you want to win this seat, you could put you on the path to guaranteeing that you would have the majority of the court through the next round of redistricting, which would be huge. If you're a conservative, you would want to win this seat to keep the hole from getting deeper, so you're not taking a decade to climb out of that hole. Now, I mean, this race by itself is not going to determine those things, but if you add this year's race plus next year's race, I mean, there's a window for liberals to lock up the majority through the 2031 redistricting process, which means the state Supreme Court would be a backstop for any map if Republicans had the governor's office and both houses of the legislature after the 2030 elections. You'd have a friendly court you could go to challenge that map. If you're a conservative, do some math. It's 4-3 right now for liberals. If you lose this one, it goes 5-2. If you lose in 2027, it goes to 6-1. Well, now you've got to win in 2018. Rebecca Dallett's on to get it back to 5-2. You have to hold Brian Hagedorn in 2029 to keep it 5-2. Beat Jill Karofsky in 2030. Get back to, you're talking like you wouldn't have a chance to flip the majority until 2033 when Janet Protasiewicz is up, and you'd have to run, 4 elections in a row. That's not great odds for you. So yeah, there's a lot at stake, even though it's not for control of the court. There's a lot, for the future of the court at stake on Tuesday.
Can you lay out for people who may not know just the redistricting in 2030, how the court could be involved in that?
So we got a couple of things. One, after every census, which will happen in 2030, states then draw new maps. If you have unified control of the Capitol by one party, hey, it's easier to draw a map. We saw that in 2011 with Republicans. It was so challenged in court, but it didn't go anywhere in the federal courts, and you had a conservative majority in the state of the Supreme Court. Well, 2020 rolls around, that census, 2021, they go to try and draw maps. They can't agree on it. You got a Democratic governor, Tony Evers. You got Republicans in the legislature who controlled both houses. It ends up in the court. First, it has a conservative majority, which ends up picking a Republican-drawn map for the legislature. Then also picks the governor's map, though with a least change approach to the Republican one drawn a decade before, so it's not really his favorite map, it's the one that he drew within those parameters that set those boundaries. Then in 2023, liberals flip it, new challenge of legislative lines, get new maps that lead to Democrats picking up, more than a dozen seats or whatever it was in 2024. So it's hugely consequential, the role the courts play in these map processes. Now, you also, the federal courts, and, it's a long way away till 2031 when they start this process, but depending what court you end up in, you could have a more favorable court in the state of Wisconsin than the federal court if you have control of that state Supreme Court.
As you've mentioned, this election could significantly help determine the future of the court. Last year, we had a Wisconsin Supreme Court race. The election was going to determine whether liberals could keep majority on the court, and it was going to determine the outcome of a big abortion rights case. It was 2 months into Republican President Donald Trump's second term. There had been a whirlwind of action, including DOJ's mass layoffs of federal workers. Elon Musk and other out-of-state donors were massively spending in that race. Some said that it was a referendum on a sitting U.S. president and the popularity of the world's richest man. Is there a way to see this year's Wisconsin Supreme Court race as a referendum on Trump or a referendum on anything else?
It hasn't been nationalized the way it was a year ago. So don't forget, beyond just the influence of Trump and Elon Musk, there was a perception nationally among Republicans that that court race for 2025 could end up determining whether Wisconsin's congressional map was redrawn. Now, Susan Crawford, who won that race, downplayed that chatter before and after her election. We have not seen the court overturn a map since Crawford got on the court, right? But Republicans were super interested because, hey, Wisconsin is a swing state, and if you lose a seat or two, that could be the control majority of the House of Representatives. So that made it much different. Two, it was for control. See, all this money flowing in. It's just not the same pizzazz. This time around, you're not seeing Trump endorse Maria Lazar. You're not seeing Elon Musk here. You're still seeing talk about abortion being an issue. It came up during the debate on Thursday night. We've seen some ads about that in the race, but there just isn't the same intensity because there aren't the same number of resources that we saw in 25 or in 23 for that matter.
You mentioned the debate. It was last Thursday. It was the first and only debate between the candidates. Where did they come down on the issue of abortion? And is that issue as salient now that the court has ruled that abortion is lawful in Wisconsin up to 20 weeks post-fertilization?
So it's a good question how the impact, I mean, it's still not a great issue for conservatives and spring electorates from what we've seen. Maria Lazar is trying to walk this line where she said that, the Dobbs decision to overturn Roe v. Wade, it sent the issue back to the states, that states could decide what's best for them, which he said was good. Chris Taylor knocked her on that, saying it's not good for victims of rape and incest in states that have outlawed abortion. But Lazar is also, pointing to that 20-week ban that remains as she calls it a compromise, that she would uphold that law if she was elected. She's trying to find that sweet spot of, not alienating people in the middle on that issue. Now, the challenge for her is you also need people on the right to be motivated for you because you are the conservative, quote-unquote, candidate. And I'm not sure that approach from my conversation so far is really motivating conservatives to turn out for her because she says a lot, I'm not a conservative, I'm an independent, which is in some ways might be admirable to take that kind of an approach to a Supreme Court race, but people want to know where your values are. We saw that Marquette poll earlier this year. They do want to know where you stand on things, and Lazar's avoided that. Taylor, meanwhile, Lazar tried to go after her about a bill that she co-sponsored in the legislature that would have, to Lazar, allowed abortion up to the moment of birth. Taylor said no, that would codify Roe v. Wade. You don't understand the bill. So they went back and forth about that. But it's still a pertinent issue. It doesn't have the same, it seems, motivation in this race as maybe the 25 and 23, the same emphasis. But it's still out there and still a challenge for conservatives to navigate the electorate in the spring, which has kind of started to tilt more Democratic.
This is Capital Notes. I'm Maayan Silver, speaking with J.R. Ross of WizPolitics.com. So both candidates in that debate refused to say whether a 3-judge panel was correct in dismissing a challenge to Wisconsin's congressional map as a partisan gerrymander. What did they actually say?
So they, Taylor had this line where she said that, she believes voters should be able to pick who represents them, not the other way around. She went after Lazar for, defending Republican-drawn maps in 2011. Lazar said that she did her job back in 2011 as an attorney at the Department of Justice to represent the state, and that the maps that Taylor said were gerrymandered were found to be constitutional, that there was one change made by a federal court. If you really want to see a gerrymander, go to Illinois, look at their congressional maps. So, a little back and forth, but I don't know that really made a lot of hay with voters in general.
What is the latest on Wisconsin's congressional redistricting lawsuits?
So there are 2 of them. Both were assigned to 3-judge panels to kind of proceed. And the first 3-judge panel handling the partisan gerrymandering case basically said, hey, neither the law that created this process nor the Supreme Court in assigning it to us gave us any direction on how to do this thing. Are we to arm the Supreme Court? Are we supposed to be a fact-finding body? Do we overturn the maps if we think that's appropriate? We can use a little help here, guys, to tell us what we're supposed to do. Without that guidance, we conclude that we are circuit court judges And we are not allowed to overturn the state Supreme Court, which picked the map that's now in place for congressional lines. So they dismissed the case. There's a second suit that is about a anti-competitive gerrymander, which what that means is it was drawn to protect incumbents and shield them from any real challenge. It's a unique legal theory. It hasn't really been pushed in Wisconsin courts that I've seen anywhere. So that one's still out there, but there's a motion to dismiss in that lawsuit. There's also a trial set for 2027. So the bottom line is no new map in Wisconsin ahead of the November elections. Actually, you can begin circulating nomination papers, I believe, April 15th for the seats in Congress. So the clock has kind of run out for a new map here. The question is whether that other lawsuit will it proceed that trial in 2027. And oh, by the way, there will probably be an appeal of the decision dismissing the lawsuit. So where does that, does that go to the Supreme Court? And how quickly does the court act upon that appeal and what guidance we get from that court this whole process?
We've got abortion, congressional redistricting, Act 10, lawsuit, all that could be coming before the court. What do you think are going to be the issues most mobilizing voters this week?
Good question, because, one of my questions is who's mobilizing the voters? And the reason I say that is looking at the spending, there's definitely an advantage for Chris Taylor. And it's a big one, about $8 million on her side to like $915,000 was our side. That was as of a week out from the election. The numbers have grown since then with more stuff rolling in. But side advantage for Taylor. But what I really noticed is there wasn't a single group as of late last week that had done any independent expenditure reports showing that they were trying to contact voters to turn out Lazar. Like there's nobody doing mail, doing phone banks, knocking on doors. Usually you see groups out there doing that stuff to help their side. And it's happening for liberals. I saw these reports showing people out there doing doors and mail for Chris Taylor. There's not so much effort for Maria Lazar. And so that raises the question, what's going to motivate people to come out to vote? Like, is Lazar by herself going to be able to do that? I mean, she's underfunded compared to Chris Taylor. The state Republican Party is doing some things. We're seeing county parties do some things. There's a group called Turning Point Action that posts on social media is chasing ballots the spring election, but they're not filing reports for the state. So it's just not clear what's the effort like on the conservative side, other than it is clear the conservative coalition is not coming to play in this race the way it has in the past. I mean, I'm not seeing the big Republican groups out there engaging in this race. And the question is why? Is it because they don't think Lazar can win because of some deficiency of their candidacy? Or is it they've looked at the last few races and gone, we are in trouble in Wisconsin right now, the spring electorate. We need to regroup, figure out how to get a path forward than spending money on the spring race. We're going to spend the fall, the governor's race, when we focus on that.
And are you seeing any sort of anything happening behind the scenes in terms of mobilizing to try to change that on behalf of Republicans?
This spring, no. I mean, if you do express advocacy in Wisconsin, you must file a report showing that you spent the money, and they're not filing it. Now, I am seeing like some conservative groups doing digital ads for Lazar. There's some help out there in that regard, but as far as like a presence on the doors or on the phones, we're not seeing it so far, unless it's going to be something really late. It's not out there right now. And don't forget, early voting has been open for, it was open for 2 weeks. It's closed now. But people have been voting for a while, and they weren't getting contacts from anybody other than maybe, some state party stuff saying, go vote for me, Lazar. That doesn't help a whole lot.
On that note of turnout in 2025 was about 50% in that state Supreme Court election. Of course, that was an anomaly, but in 2018, voter turnout was about 22%. What can you tell us about the previous normal in the state Supreme Court race turnout? And do you think we'll have a new normal with this election, or it's going to go back to, I know you don't have as you always say, you don't have a crystal ball.
Well, 2018, just shy of 1 million people. 2019, 1.2 million people. 2020, you had a presidential primaries going on, so that's kind of like not a great comparison. 23, we had like just shy of 2 million people, something like that turn out. 25, 2.3, that's huge. So people I talk to think you're more toward that 2018, 2019 model for turnout. One of the things is it seems like there are a lot of people who are undecided in this race. The question is, Why are they undecided? Are they truly like split between Taylor and Lazar? They're well educated about the candidates and their positions, but just can't make up their minds? Or are they conservative voters who are like, well, I know I'm not for Chris Taylor, but I don't know Maria Lazar. I'm not sure what I'm going to do. Does that voter turn out, right? Like that's the challenge for Lazar, is to get that undecided Republican voter to turn out on Tuesday. You need those folks to win. If you don't get them turned out, you're probably not going to have a path to victory. Whereas with Taylor, the groups are targeting Democratic voters to get them to turn out for her. And so they seem to have the message that she's their candidate. Don't forget, though, all this spending is not overwhelming. It's not like $20 million has been spent by Chris Taylor. It's like, $9 million and change, which is still a lot of money, don't get me wrong. But it's not an overwhelming amount. So I'm curious, like, what's going to drive those voters to the polls? Will they feel that engaged, excited about this race without the same stakes as we saw in 2025 and 2023?
And do you think with a lot of people, it's not necessarily that they're undecided, it's that they're just not following this race?
Yep. If you're not following, you're probably going to turn out. Like, that's a reality. So when you look at the Marquette poll from a few weeks ago, it showed all those undecideds. I'm not sure that really they're truly likely voters in the spring, as much as they're people who are, they're voters, but they don't turn out in spring elections. So I don't know if it's a great guide of what's going or great look at what's going on. But yeah, if you're not decided by now, what's going to change your mind between now and Tuesday? Like, that's a huge question.
Is there something that you're going to be following on election night?
Yeah. Look at Waukesha County. That's Lazar's home county. They usually have a good number of votes in by like 9:30ish. Try and see if, is she above 62%? That's kind of like been my mark for conservative / Republican candidates to win statewide, to be around there. The exception has been Donald Trump. He got less than 60% in 2024 and still won statewide because of a surge outstate. So if you're using the old rules of thumb, you need to be above that mark in Waukesha County. That'll be a good gauge early in the evening about how Lazar is doing.
Well, thanks for, as always, filling us in on the political news, JR, and thanks for joining me on Capital Notes.
Anytime.
That was J.R. Ross, editor of WisPolitics.com, speaking with me, WUWM's Maayan Silver. Listen for our segments every other Monday with an extended segment on Lake Effect, and check out the Capital Notes podcast wherever you get your podcasts.